Welcome to our public meeting, Council Chambers Municipal Office, in person and live streamed electronically for Tuesday, February 18th, 2025. Opening of our meeting, the land acknowledgement. The council and staff of the Township of Montague acknowledge that the sacred land on which the Township of Montague is now located and this meeting is being held is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. Introduction. The purpose of this public meeting is to hear the following application for zoning bylaw amendment. ZB 24-001, Corrigan 800 Ford Road. The planner will provide a brief overview of the file. The applicant will be given an opportunity to explain the need for the zoning bylaw amendment. Then any person or public body in opposition and then in favor to the application will be heard. If a person or public body does not make oral or written submissions at a public meeting or does not make written submissions to the Township of Montague before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body may not be added to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal, OLT, unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. If you wish to be notified of the decision of council with respect to the below listed application, you must submit a written request to the clerk, or you must sign the attendance list provided at tonight's meeting. This will also entitle you to be advised of a possible Ontario Land Tribunal hearing. The clerk must provide notice of council's decision to all those who request a copy within 15 days after the day the bylaw is passed. An appeal to the tribunal may be filed with the clerk of the Township of Montague by any party entitled to do so, not later than 20 days after the day that the notice of decision was given. The notice of appeal must set out the objection to the bylaw and the reasons in support of the objection, accompanied by the required fee. Any disclosure of interest now or at any time during our meeting and our approval of the agenda. Moved by Councillor Johnson and seconded by Councillor Crabtree that the public meeting agenda dated February 18th, 2025 be approved as presented this date. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So now we will start with our applications for ZB 24-001 Corrigan 800 Ford Road. The order of speaking is our planner review and proposed bylaw, the applicant's comments, and then the oral and written submissions received: Lacey Corrigan and Tim Ryan, Bob and Mary Lou Sample, Michael and Melissa Pierre, John Couture, and anybody else that's here to speak. So I'll open it up with our planner, please.
And I do apologize in advance. I do have a scratchy throat, so I will be taking frequent sips of water. Okay. So the subject property is a 3.18 hectare or 7.87 acre parcel, municipally known as 800 Ford Road. This property is currently developed with an unfinished structure, originally proposed to be used as a garden center with an upper level residential unit. This property is currently serviced with a private well and will require an on-site septic system. The subject property is zoned rural with a special exception to permit a garden center as an additional permitted use. And accordingly, the permitted uses for these lands include the following: a variety of dwelling, residential dwelling uses such as accessory dwelling unit, ARUs, or additional residential units, agricultural use, bed and breakfast, cannabis cultivation facility, conservation use, garden center, type A group home, hobby farm, home-based business, hunting or fishing camp, kennel, and then more residential uses, semi-detached and single detached. The applicant is seeking to use the subject lands as a place of assembly with an upper level residential unit. And since a place of assembly is not a permitted use in the rural zone by right, a zoning amendment would be required to approve this use. A place of assembly is defined under the township zoning bylaw as a building or structure used for the operation of arts and craft shows, trade fairs, fashion shows, public meetings, banquets, community activities or events, conferences, auctions, and similar activities. A township staff began pre-consultation with the applicant and their agent in early 2024 to discuss their proposal. and the studies and materials that would be required to support their proposal, specifically a detailed concept plan, a planning rationale, servicing options statement, traffic impact assessment, and an MDS analysis. Upon receiving these documents, staff forwarded the servicing options statement and traffic impact assessment onto professional peer reviewers that were retained by the township at the applicant's expense for further review and comment. And as a result, some clarification and amendment was required, and the applicant's submission documents were accordingly revised. The application was deemed complete by township staff on January 17th, 2025. And notice was provided pursuant to the requirements under the Planning Act, namely all landowners within 120 meters of the subject lands, all agencies and public bodies as required under the Planning Act. Notice was also posted, laminated notice at the subject property, and notice was also provided on the township's website. Additionally, notice was circulated to township staff, management to provide comments. Development proposals do require a review and analysis of applicable law and policies to demonstrate that the proposal is appropriate or can be made appropriate for the location proposed. Those references reviewed in connection with this application include the Planning Act, the Provincial Planning Statement 2024, minimum distance separation document produced by OMAFRA, the Township of Montague's official plan, which was approved in 2023, and the Township's zoning bylaw, which was approved in 2024. The applicable PPS, I'll use that term when I'm referring to the provincial planning statement, official plan and zoning bylaw references are contained in staff's report. Development proposals that are located within a rural designation should take into consideration the surrounding developed community, recognition of opportunities for economic development and tourism, and the potential impact on existing infrastructure. Additionally, natural features shall be protected and hazards are to be avoided wherever possible. Appendix C to the report identifies an area of organic soils, which is considered to be a natural hazard in the rear corner of the property, where development is not proposed. And Appendix D does not identify any natural heritage features on the subject lands. The subject lands are designated as rural in the township's official plan, which does allow for a variety of land uses, including agriculture, forestry, management or use of resources, conservation, various outdoor recreational uses, and commercial, industrial, and limited residential uses. The intent of the rural designation is to retain the rural and recreational flavor of rural lands while providing for a modest amount of compatible and orderly new development. Land uses in the rural area will generally relate to the management use of resources, resource-based recreational activities, and commercial, industrial, and limited residential uses. The official plan provides that approval authorities, and in this case, that would be your council, would apply the following objectives in their decision-making process: protecting existing land uses from incompatible development, conducting planning openly and fairly, encouraging economic development, minimizing risks related to natural and man-made hazards, and promoting safe and efficient road networks, and providing municipal services at an appropriate level of expectation. As a result of circulation and posting of the notice, 13 public comments were received. They are attached to the planning report. A few of these neighbors are here this evening to express their comments in a public forum. Comments were received from Enbridge and Hydro One, both advising they had no objections. RVCA also provided comment that they had no objection, but did suggest implementation of best practices related to protection of groundwater. Township staff also provided comments related to road impact, fire protection, septic servicing, and building permit requirements. The applicant's agent, Steve Pence from Novatech, will provide you with an overview of his client's proposal. The applicant, who unfortunately is not able to be here in person tonight due to a previously scheduled commitment, will address council via Zoom, and then members of the public who wish to speak will be given an opportunity to do so. Council will not be making a decision this evening. Staff will prepare a report to be considered by council at an upcoming council meeting that will address any recommendations that result from this evening's meeting. So I will turn the evening over to Mr. Pence. We'll get the the projector up and running for you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Steve Pence, as I was just introduced. I'm a planning consultant with Novatech Engineering in Ottawa. We're a firm of engineers, planners, and landscape architects. And we're here tonight to present the details of a zoning amendment application that we prepared for our clients, Lacey Corrigan and Tim Ryan. As you heard, they're not able to be here tonight, so they'll be joining us via Zoom. And I'll probably do most of the talking, but they will be available to answer any questions that relate specifically more to the business rather than the planning merits of the application. I wasn't sure how things would go tonight in terms of what sort of presentation material you would hear from staff. So some of the details that I had proposed to speak to are going to be sounding a little bit repetitive, but I intend that to be informative for you in the audience and for your council as well. I understand that the point of tonight's meeting is really about an opportunity for the public to weigh in on the application, provide comments and questions, and I'm here to answer questions as best I can. And that at some point in the coming weeks, there'll be a staff recommendation that comes forward to council. So tonight's meeting is really an opportunity for me to present what I think is important for you to understand both the application and then to take any questions from either from council or from the public. So, and again, some of this will be repetitive, but I think it's just important to explain the application details. This is a zoning amendment to add an additional permitted use to the property. Currently the lands are zone rural exception 2, which is just a zone that allows for a very limited range of rurally oriented commercial uses. And our client's interest is to develop this property further to allow for things like a wedding reception, for banquets, for whether it's bar mitzvah, birthday parties, any sort of thing where you have a gathering of people come together in a place of assembly. That's a defined term in the zoning bylaw. And that's what this application is about. We chose to stick to retaining or working with the terms in the biology and the zoning bylaw. Place of assembly is what most closely matches the intended use of the property. So that's what the request is. As you heard, the property is about 3.2 hectares in area and about 150 meters of frontage. So it's a fairly decently sized property. It's in an area that is pretty rural, as you can imagine. I think you know the property very well. As I said, it's zoned rural and permits a very limited range of uses. There's an existing building on the property, about 476 square meters, that was sort of built to accommodate a garden center, but can easily be converted to use as a wedding venue or as a place of assembly. That building is serviced by a proposed septic system that has been sized or would be sized to accommodate the sort of worst case maximum number of guests, being 140. That's the number of guests that this building could occupy in sort of in a wedding venue setting. I'll speak to a little bit more about that in a few minutes. And on site, given the nature of the size of the property, there's ample space for parking. All parking would be on the property, no street parking. And I'll show us the concept plan here just momentarily. That's well that kind of looks like from the sky. A few things about the proposed use. This is a sort of a niche industry. By that I mean a wedding venue isn't something you see everywhere. It's something that is sort of glasses sometimes I don't. It's short-term short-term stays, they're short durations, they're by invitation only, and they are event destinations. So our application proposes this as a very good location for this type of use. People that are attracted to wedding venues in the rural area want to go for its rural amenity. They don't want to always be in urban areas like in cities and in towns. So there's lots of examples of this kind of use throughout rural landscapes in all of Eastern Ontario and Ontario for that matter. So we'd like to leverage the rural entity. And as I say, there's no overnight accommodations. This is about short-term visits, short duration stays, and by invitation only. And another important element is that it's an indoor use for the most part. There could be some outdoor activities on nice days, but for the most part, it's limited to indoor use. As you heard planner highlight in her introductory remarks, we had contacted the township early on in this process to start a pre-consultation process, and what that is where we meet with the staff and we propose the concept, the idea of what we're proposing to develop. And I shouldn't say we, I say our clients are proposing to develop. And we talk about what those prerequisites are to make a complete application. So from that, we determined that we needed to prepare a planning rationale for the concept plan. And so talk a bit about that in a moment. A planning rationale is essentially a report that it's a policy document that describes the application, presents how does it conform with provincial planning interests, how does it conform to the county land official plan and the township's official plan, and what does the zoning look like. So that's what the planning rationale is all about. We also were required to prepare a servicing options statement. This is a study prepared by a professional engineer that looks like how can this site be serviced. So given the location of the site, there's no municipal services, it's going on wells and septic. So it looks at whether the site itself can accommodate a septic system large enough to accommodate the use. So that's what that study looks at. And it also looks at the quality of water that you can expect from a well to service the use and whether or not that water is of a good enough quality. And the third thing, and that was prepared by a company named RPM. The third thing there is a traffic, I called it a traffic impact statement, but more or less it's a traffic brief. It's a little traffic study that looks at what you can expect in terms of traffic flow generation from this type of use, in terms of how many trips can come in and out, and what are the peak times, and is this actual use going to create any traffic hazards on the highway or on the roads, road network, from a safety and from a capacity point of view. So that was prepared as well. And finally, we did an MDS analysis. For those of you that don't know what MDS is, it stands for minimum distance separation. It's a study that looks at compatibility and separation distances between agricultural uses and non-agricultural uses. Not sure how well that shows up for everybody, but that's the concept plan. Essentially, it's showing in the middle there a large parking area for about 77 parking spaces. That's more than enough spaces that are required to meet the zoning bylaw requirements, but it's set at 77 spaces, which equates to the number of spaces that you would need if the site was operating at capacity. And you can see that, sorry, not the site, but the proposed building size based on square footage, if it were acting at capacity. You can see that the site is large enough to accommodate additional parking spaces if they were required. It shows an entrance to the site, or a traditional looping laneway that allows for drop off and pickup at the building. And at the rear of the building is where the septic system is proposed, and there's space there for an outdoor gazebo. The site would be serviced by a well, and you can see for the most part the site is already I would say it's generally devoid of trees, but there are some trees sort of at the top of the screen and scattered around, but in large part it is a site that's fairly open. What's also notable about the concept plan is that all the proposed use, or all the uses, or all the use conforms to all the performance standards of the zoning bylaw. So we're not asking for any exceptions to things like setbacks, lot coverage, building height. any of those sorts of standards that are normally applied to all development. It's fully compliant with the types of performance standards that are required here. And so, the ask is really only about asking for an additional permitted use, not making exceptions to the rules of the bylaw. So a little bit of a policy context, our planning rationale spoke about policy context. It addressed matters of provincial interest. But where I'd like to start here is really at more regional and local level, starting with the county official plan. County official plan designates lands as rural area. And it's an important statement in the county's official plan that rural area designation is not to prohibit rural development. And it's not just saying it can only be used for things like agriculture and for residential, but it provides a framework for appropriate growth. And what that appropriate growth means, it can mean a range of different land uses. And what the county's plan does, is it gives local official plans the ability to set their own policy direction for what they feel their rural development should look like. So it provides some guardrails, and it provides some direction to how lower tier municipalities like Montague should develop the policies for their official plan. So now if we move to the township official plan, the lands are correspondingly zoned, designated rural again. And the township's official plan permits a range of rurally oriented land uses, including commercial uses. So what the rural designation in Montague is saying is that this is a wide range of uses are permitted. It includes things like residential, agriculture, commercial, even industrial. But they have to be appropriate for the location that's proposed. And so to implement that, the commercial uses are subject to the policies in section 3.6.5.1. And we addressed each of those policies in our planning rationale to demonstrate, in our opinion, how this commercial use as a place of assembly could suitably be located at this location. In other words, how does it conform to the official plan policies with respect to commercial uses? So we think we've done a good job of identifying what those criteria are and how this would adhere to those policies. I should also mention that it's not just about land use compatibility in terms of how land uses fit with one another. The provincial policy statement, provincial planning statement rather, county's plan and the local official plan also talk about creating opportunities for a diversified rural economy. And that's important because what that says to me is that in rural areas, we should also have economic development and economic growth. It's not just about where people want to live. It's not just about agriculture. It's also about supporting the rural communities with economic development through a diversified economy. So moving now to the proposed amendment again, this is more or less considered as a bit of a summary slide because I'd like to leave lots of time for questions and to hear what everybody else has to say tonight. But the request is to add a place of assembly as an additional permitted use. No exceptions are being requested to things like performance standards. So it's fully complying with regards to those RU zone standards. The official plans are supportive, they provide a supportive policy context, and they are supported by technical studies. Both the roads or both the transportation study we did or had done, and the servicing study that was done by RPM are both supportive studies that deal with the technical merits of the application. So in our view, this use is considered appropriate for the location, as demonstrated through our planning rationale. And implementation control would be done through things like municipal bylaws, namely the zoning bylaw, as well as other bylaws like noise bylaws, and perhaps other types of municipal bylaws that I'm not familiar with that the municipality might have. And finally, also something called site plan control bylaw. So site plan control is a process that municipalities have as a tool in their toolbox to regulate development in addition to what zoning does. And given the nature of this type of use, they would also trigger site plan approval. So that's a second or companion type of application that's required in order to get the appropriate approvals in place for this type of use to operate on the property. So I'm gonna end there, I think, and leave that for questions from people, and I'll remain in the room first to answer anything. And hopefully that provides a little bit of context for the basis of the questions that were here. Thank you.
So next, we'll hear from Lacey Corrigan and Tim Ryan.
I think Steve was able to capture everything that we need to present tonight. We just want to say that we're appreciative of the opportunity to present this to the township, and we look forward to hopefully working with the community and the township to make this go ahead.
So next is Bob and Mary Lou Sanford, please.
I don't actually have anything formal prepared. I feel that if our letters were being read that we submitted, that kind of highlights all of our concerns about the development of this property. You know, I think that we're all very worried about this. It really doesn't, it's not in keeping with the rural nature of our property. There's many generations of samples that have lived in this township. 5 generations, I counted back, I think 4 of them are rolling over in their graves right now, thinking about having this kind of a commercial venture on Ford Road, which is, it's an aggregate road. To me, it's not conducive to this kind of an activity. And what happens with this building in the future? You know, we've got property there, our son will probably inherit it. You know, what is this building going to be in the future? You know, will he even want to build a house there? I just completely disagree with this proposal, and I think Bob agrees.
And next is Michael and Melissa Peter, please.
Is that all right?
Right, my name is Michael Pierre and I live at 875 Ford Road, which is right across the street from the proposed development. I wrote a letter to the township to explain all of the reasons why I'm opposed to the development. And I'm not going to go over all of those points now because it was a very long letter and I was pretty upset when I wrote it. I'm not the only one. There's a number of people in the community who are upset at what's happened here. It's been years now that we've watched development happen on that property. The old barn came down, the wedding venue was built, all the landscaping is all done. And all of us knew that whole time that the end goal was to have a wedding venue. Somebody spilled the beans early on and the news spread around the neighborhood. But we also heard some contradicting explanations, and we knew that the property was not zoned to allow wedding venue. So this led to a lot of concern and worry in our neighborhood, a lot of anxiety about what was really truly the intention. So finally, we got notice of this public meeting, and us residents only had a few days to get this all figured out. We're not land planners or engineers. So we only had a few days to look at all of the official plans and the bylaws and to try and get this figured out. I was pretty shocked when I saw the reports that were submitted to the township in support of this development. There was the engineering report that claims that our road is in perfect condition and doesn't even need any maintenance. But we all live on that road and we know that that's not true. There's the report from Novatech that claims that this proposal is appropriate for the area and in accordance with all of the official plans for every level of government. But those official plans are publicly available and easy to read. The township bylaw, as it is, does not permit place of assembly as a use on rural land. The plan for the township of Montague does list some commercial purposes that are appropriate for rural land, but it does not list place of assembly in there. The county plan calls for preserving the rural character of rural areas, and the provincial plan calls for directing commercial development to settlement areas. And of course, all of this makes sense. It's a rural area. We all moved to a rural area for a reason, and it was to enjoy the peace and tranquility of rural life. This proposal is to bring hundreds of people to the property between guests, food service, DJs, entertainment. It would be hundreds of people multiple times per week, maybe more. It doesn't make sense to locate that in a rural area. And I wish that we had all had the opportunity to debate this before the property was built, landscaped, complete with the iron gates ready to go. I think that we residents on Ford Road were reasonable people, but it's not reasonable to have hundreds of people descend on our neighborhood to party every weekend and then pack up and go back to their quiet neighborhoods to tuck their kids in while our neighborhood is stuck with the noise, the traffic, the mischief, and all of the other problems that would come along with it. Thank you.
And I have one keynote to add, if that's okay. So just along, with the roads. So Ford Road and Highway 15 is a pretty dangerous intersection, and most of the people will be turning back, likely to go towards Ottawa. Same with McLaughlin and Highway 15. Those two roads where they meet Highway 15 are known to be notorious for lots of accidents. Excess traffic, 77 cars driving home in the middle of the night, going to turn the same way, like it's disaster. Looking for disaster, like you'd have to put up traffic lights, more lighting added. And then I'm just worried about kids riding down the street with their bikes, people walking their dogs. It's dangerous enough as it is in the road condition. And like they're at risk of, you know, getting stone chipped, whatever, but with added vehicles, that's just gonna increase it tenfold. And I don't want neighbors getting hit, children getting hit, dogs, what name it. That's all I had to add to Michael's. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is John Couture.
John wasn't able to come, he's on snow removal, to his wife Krista. Our concern was the road. Right now, when there's an accident on Highway 15, our road gets multiple traffic because of closures, even though they're supposed to be using McPherson. Well, Ford Road is the easiest one to in and out. And when that traffic is there, like, you can't even barely see because there's so much dust on the road. So that number one, summer weddings, the road cannot, how do I say it? It can't handle any more traffic. Like even with Gillies Corners growing up, all that extra subdivisions, the people that going into Smiths Falls use that road. It's like on a Saturday and Sunday, you can't even sit out in your backyard because there's so much dust. And so extra traffic, I'm sorry, is our main concern. So.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? State your name, please.
Oh, Paul Millar, I sent in an email, I didn't ask to speak at the meeting, I guess I'm supposed to, anyway. I emailed about 4 or 5 different points of concern that I had. Speaking of the road, I just wanted to add on the road subject, I don't know, I'd invite all of council to come out in the spring after the thaw and take a drive down Ford Road, and you'll get an idea of what our concern really is. One of the major concerns, that road just turns into mush, it's soup in the springtime, or after 2 or 3 days of rain. If it ain't mud, then it's dust, like Krista said, so. Very concerned about the additional traffic we're gonna get on that road. And, you know, with the shape of the road and the condition of the road, so. Hey,
And I had something else. Is there gonna be a liquor license for this property?
I would say yes, but that's an operational item that I can't speak to, but I
Well,
would
that would be a
presume,
concern.
but not, that's not a concern that would that should be considered in making a planning decision. But it's something that I would expect there to be a liquor license for sure.
Mhm. And during evening hours, all, like, can somebody rent it during the day? And a liquor license be going on?
Again, that's more of an operational consideration. Where only zoning establishes the use. How it's used within the limits of zoning isn't something I can really speak to. That's more of a question for my client.
But what I was thinking was if they have a liquor license, you can start drinking at 10 o'clock in the morning. Will it become a bar? You know, a hangout?
Well, that, again, zoning establishes the type of use, and so a bar wouldn't be a permitted use unless it was in association with an event. It's like a wedding. You couldn't just pop in for a beer and have it anyway.
Is there any other questions, comments from the public?
And I would just like to ensure that everyone who has attended tonight, and I do appreciate you being here and providing your comments, this is great. But make sure that you do sign the attendance form so that you can be notified of any decisions that are made. Okay? Last chance for any questions? Thank you again.
So moved by Councillor Crabtree and seconded by Deputy Reeve Carroll that council adjourns the public meeting of February 18th, 2025 at 6:36 p.m. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Welcome back. A regular meeting of council in person and live streamed electronically Tuesday, February 18th, 2025. Reminder of our upcoming events, the chili cook-off, March 8th at Rosedale Hall, $5 a person. Chili submissions to contact the rec committee, and the St. Patrick's Day Euchre and Dinner, March 14th at Rosedale Hall at $10 a person. I'll open our meeting with our land acknowledgement. The council and staff of the Township of Montague acknowledge that this sacred land on which the Township of Montague is now located, and this meeting is being held, is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. We'll have a moment of silence, please. Thank you. So before I do the adoption of the agenda, I also want to thank our Public Works crew. They have certainly been put to the task the last few days, and we are greatly appreciative of their long hours. So thank you very much. So moved by Councillor Johnson and seconded by Deputy Reeve Carroll that the regular meeting of council agenda dated February 18th, 2025 be approved as presented this date. All in favor? And that is carried. Disclosure of interest at any time during the meeting. So moved by Deputy Reeve Carroll and seconded by Councillor Crabtree that the minutes of the regular meeting of council dated February 4th, 2025 be approved as presented. All in favor? And that is carried. You. Business arising?
Yeah.
Yep.
I guess I did have a conversation with somebody in the public, but also like just sort of thinking about the one that we talked about for the authority for the dangerous dog designation and the one for the bylaw officer. And I guess my thoughts behind it are, I think I'm more not in favor now of delegating that authority. Because I think the big part of it for me is that, while I agree that the bylaw officer gives, is the appropriate person to make sure that those rules are put in place and everything else. I think in any case, and just like we use it for planning, we use it for everything else too as well, where that person would give us a report and advise council to say, this is what I think and if we should do it or not. And I still like that, and we put that into the bylaw too as well, when we did the last one too as well. And I think that's still the best way to do it, where we're making, it still gives council the ability to make the decision. But also in the same token, it's getting the staff recommendation, in this case, the bylaw recommendation to say, this is what you should or should not do. But for the public safety side of it, if they say, you know what, we think that we could rescind that designation against that dog, but us as council say, you know what, we're not feeling that. We think that we may need to go the different direction. And we could make that call for our residents. There is still the court proceedings after that too, as well as a chance to, but I think, I think we talked about too as well, where is there like a legal problem or a legal issue where if we make that decision? Well, I don't think that's any different than any other recommendation that we have, or in a planning or something else that could go along. We could agree to something that could go terribly wrong near an aggregate or down something else too as well. And we have to make the most informed decision that we have with all of the information we have in front of us. So that's where I think us keeping that designation for us to be able to make that decision. We have it with our staff recommendation. We have all that stuff. So if we decide to take it from the bylaw officer saying that, yes, we agree, we should rescind that. I don't see how there would be any change of our protection side of it, because it's the same process that we would go through the whole tire. I guess the only case where it may be is if they say you shouldn't rescind it, and we do rescind it, and then something negative happens. But I think for the public safety side of it and everything else, I think council should have their sort of final stamp of approval or not approval of it. And to go on that other last point is there is a court proceedings too as well. If we say no, we're keeping it, we're not changing that proponent still has the ability to go to the courts. But I don't see how that's going to make a big difference as far as except just removing sort of council's decision. I think that's why we are here and elected is to make that call, especially in a public safety aspect. And I think the public would expect us to be, to weigh in or to make that final stamp, once again, always with, the staff recommendations and the staff information and all of and everything out laid out to us and we see it all. So sort of my thought process, and I'm open for anything.
So yeah, so the comments you've made, we did receive the email from that individual.
Yes.
So, and I do believe that they will be coming forward to speak as well. So I think at that point, we'll be moving. We can
Discuss.
readdress it. Because the individual did reach out to all of us by email
She
with
did.
the points that you've brought forward.
Yes.
So I think then
I don't believe she's going,
she did state in there that she
Yeah.
would be
She wants to be
presenting.
there.
She could not
She
be
wants to be-
at this meeting. so it's too late.
Which she open to, like, I mean,
Yeah.
I agree, I mean, she did contact me, too as well,
Yeah.
and that's fine.
I think we all got the email,
Yeah, we all
so
got it.
therefore,
It
yeah,
is, for sure, yeah, so,
She
but,
said she was gonna come
So
to
she's
delegation,
going
but she
to
couldn't make it
delegation.
this one.
yeah, too
so,
late. That's
Yeah.
why.
well, the other side of it too is also, when will this will come back then as a
Yes.
discussion, well, I wanna put that out there though, because I think that's, and anyways,
Yeah, because it will be a discussion point after she comes back as a delegation, so.
which is fine, and also when this change to the bylaw comes up too as well, because it'll come back to council saying, here's the new change to the bylaw,
Yeah.
if we choose to,
Yeah.
approve it or not, so.
Yeah.
Anyways, those are my thoughts on it.
Okay. So we have no delegations or deputations, so on to our report of municipal officers. And our first is from our public works manager, Ed, on our lawnmower replacement.
Evening, council. Yeah, just a very basic report here. As you all know, it was budgeted in, for this year to replace the mower. Noted last year by the previous manager that the, excessive repair costs on the mower just really wasn't suitable for the work it was doing. So a decision was made to include, the funds for this year for the replacement for a more commercial industrial sort of, unit that's more suitable to the type of work that's gonna be done with it. So using the LES Canoe procurement contract, which gives us access to vendors all over the place and preferred pricing, substantial discount really, as you can see, minimum 22% off. So I was able to reach out to I heard back from, 3 out of 4 vendors. They're all relatively close by. As you can see in front of you there are the prices all fairly close. And the lowest one is the one we'd recommend, being the Kubota model, supplied locally by Hartington Equipment, plywood 43. It comes in under the $20,000 budget, substantially actually. And it's still gonna work with the trailer we have existing, to be able to move it from site to site and stuff like that, so. Any questions on that?
I'll open it up for questions.
I think this is a great cost savings and I think that's wonderful. So the secondary one is gonna be put to government bids.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
So my only suggestion is with the cost savings that we might wanna look at buying a secondary use, not as industrial. Machines break. And we've dealt with it a lot. And with the cost savings, it might be worthwhile looking at, seeing if we can find something suitable that in a pinch or even just to use around here as a whole, that we have something, first of all, a little cheaper, a little easier to use. And I know we have students running machines. It might be worthwhile having them running the more cost-effective machine as opposed to the, $18,000 machine. So that would be my only suggestion, just to have something. While one's being repaired, we still have something functional. If it's cost effective and can keep us below the 20 grand that we originally set forth. That'd be my recommendation or my suggestion.
Any other thoughts, comments from council?
Well, what we need to just keep the old one. If it's not gonna get used near as much, it won't go through the repair cycle, but be cost effective that way.
Yeah, I think the reason they were just getting rid of it was the amount of repairs towards the end of the term. So if we could find, and I'm saying we might not be able to find anything now, but if you could find something at a cost effective means, the amount of hours that you wouldn't be putting on it, you'd be saving some wear and tear on the new commercial machine, and being able to have something as a backup spare in the case that we need it while one's being repaired. Sometimes parts break and they're, you can get it right on in 15 minutes. Sometimes it's, a week away and just gives us another option other than, you know, waiting a week or whatever. It's just based on the fact that we did such a good job on saving so much money, that would be my suggestion. It's entirely up to council as a whole. It's just something I'm throwing out there.
So with your direction, I can certainly explore that. You know, we could look at perhaps, okay, what would it take for this existing unit? Maybe it's a complete new mower deck, from what I understand, that was the common failure point on this unit. I haven't really looked at it myself. I think it's to do with pulleys and blades and stuff on that deck. So, you know, perhaps it's replacing the deck and we could use it up as a backup. So I could certainly investigate that versus, it would be obviously like a residential type unit to fall in that, you know, say the 4,000 maybe left over. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, like, I trust you. And the guys to go and take a look and see if there's something that the money's left over, if it's repairing or something, another option that might be a good option that is beneficial that we could use. I mean, I think, yeah, maybe take that back and see if there's an option for it. If not, then obviously.
We have one that's gonna work. We have a new one that's gonna
That
work.
could be left over, what should they go somewhere else?
Yeah.
But if there isn't, if there is something that you think is suitable for that, then I mean, yeah.
So I think I have to amend the motion. Just to add in perhaps, look at options for a backup. Because this one does say deem surplus the used residential and post the surplus equipment of gut deals. Or,
So if you just click that off and click explore
Options.
options for a backup.
An alternative and or repair of the one that we have.
Because if Ed and them look at it, it's beyond repair, well then.
We'll throw it up there,
Yeah.
and we come back next
Right.
2 weeks and say, yeah, that, you know what, we're not gonna repair
Yeah.
this thing, but we can do this, or we don't need this, or whatever. Like I
You
said.
found this, you didn't find anything, we saved the money.
Right.
Like there are options, just, I know, my lawn tractor broke and I was using PL Premium and a whole bunch of other stuff to try to patch and repair it for the end of season, cause I couldn't get parts, so. You know, sometimes, having something so that we can function,
It's a good idea.
so.
so moved by Councillor Crabtree and seconded by Councillor Johnson, that council direct staff to proceed with the purchase of a new commercial lawnmower through the LAS new procurement group contract, which is an approved procurement method under bylaw 4021-2023, item 3.3G, and that council approve option 1 is presented this date. And explore options for an alternate backup mower and bring this back to council. All in favor? Carried. Next is a report from our clerk junior planner, Better Homes Lanark program.
Okay, so at our February 4th meeting, the draft bylaw was presented to council. And it was discussed that the $600 energy audit that would be required for applicants to be accepted into the potential approval might deter people who didn't have the financial means to pay for that. So staff recommended and council agreed that we could use up to $6,000 from the social services operating reserve. And that we could use that to assist our residents with obtaining those energy audits. The applicants would be required to provide proof of their requirement of need of financial assistance to the satisfaction of the township and or the county. And that $600 energy audit cost would then be submitted to the county for reimbursement, provided that the applicant was successful with the application. So this was sort of just prepared and brought back to sort of formalize that discussion that was had at the last meeting. The amount would be capped at 6,000, which would obviously mathing would be 10 applications, but that $6,000 would be replenished as we were repaid for audits that were being reimbursed by the County of Lanark. So I'm not the treasurer, but I can say that the 2025 budget does have just over $31,000 in the social services operating reserve. So using up to $6,000 of this, and that's provided we had 10 applicants that were interested in pursuing this program would still leave us with over $25,000 in social service reserves.
And I believe this was still Jeff brought the great idea of the revolving door possibility, so it's 10 at once, but as people get accepted and get replenished, we would allow for others to really allow to maximize the service, and I think it was a great idea.
Yeah. Hopefully we get the,
Yeah, if you get the 10.
Yeah.
hopefully we do, that's the biggest thing anyway. Yeah.
And I would like to point out as well that the bylaw that was brought to the February 4th meeting has been amended slightly. It did contain wording in there that stipulated that it was for electric heated homes, and that has been removed. So there's no requirement for the home to be heated electrically. Yes. That's it. Okay.
Perfect.
So moved by Councillor Johnson and seconded by Deputy Reeve Carroll, that council authorize the use of up to a maximum of $6,000 from the Social Services Operating Reserve to assist qualified Township of Montague applicants with obtaining energy audits required for participation in the Better Homes Lanark program, and that township applicants provide proof of the requirement of the need for financial assistance to the satisfaction of the Township of Montague and or County of Lanark. And further, that staff submit a requisition for reimbursement of said funds to the County of Lanark for approved applications. All in favor? That's carried. And then next is our administrator treasurer on our 2025 draft water wastewater budget. He's not here, but I think council,
All reviewed it.
yeah, all reviewed it, and we did advise in advance that everything was good there.
Yep.
Because we received the information from Smith Falls, which is exactly what we passed off to our users over in Adderall and on Rideau Ave. So moved by Deputy Reeve Carroll and seconded by Councillor Crabtree, that council approve the 2025 water wastewater budget as presented this date. And further, that council adopts the bylaw for the 2025 water wastewater budget and the water wastewater rates as presented this date. All in favor? That's carried. So thank you, Ally. Reports of committee I have none, petitions I have none, move on to the bylaws. So moved by Councillor Crabtree and seconded by Councillor Johnson, that bylaw 4123-2025, being a bylaw to adopt a local improvement charge residential retrofit program, be read a first, second, and third time and passed, signed, and sealed this 18th day of February 2025. All in favor? That's carried. Moved by Councillor Johnson and seconded by Deputy Reeve Carroll, that bylaw 4124-2025, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a development agreement with Edward Joseph Moulton, the owner of land legally described as part of Lot 25, Concession 8, Township of Montague, be read a first, second, and third time and passed, signed, and sealed this 18th day of February 2025. All in favor? Carried. Moved by Deputy Reeve Carroll and seconded by Councillor Crabtree, that bylaw 4125-2025, being a bylaw to adopt the 2025 municipal water, sewer, operating, and capital budgets, be read a first, second, and third time and passed, signed, and sealed this 18th day of February 2025. All in favor? That's carried. Moved by Councillor Crabtree, seconded by Councillor Johnson, that bylaw 4126-2025, being a bylaw to establish and regulate the installation, maintenance, and access to water meters and sewer services, and to establish the rates and other service charges for the use of water and sewer services, be read first, second, and third time and passed, signed, and sealed this 18th day of February 2025. All in favor? That is carried. I have no motion, notice of motion, one action item, request from the town of Smith Falls on the Gallipo Center. So before us, we have the letter that was sent to the township from the town of Smith Falls with reference to the Gallipo Center development, requesting for us to consider our share of the assessment fee percentage to be provided to assist in the financial impact study that is being done by the town of Smith Falls. So I guess we have any discussion on that as an action item?
Yeah, For myself, we need to be involved in the process. It's not our consultant or anyone that we actively went out and got, but it is a consultant. And I think as we move forward with this entire, whether or not it comes to fruition or not, there has to be a process, and I believe that we need to be involved in the process. I think a lot of times too, there's been a lot of misinformation out there, and I'd like to be able to have access to the actual study that they're doing and not find out things second and third hand. So for myself, I think that it's a good thing to be involved in the cost sharing, although I'd like to be more in control of the process. I don't think we can be at this time. But I just think we need to be involved in the process so that we can move all of this forward. My thoughts.
We sent, I believe Ali sent, because I said we, yes, because we're a group. Ali sent a letter stating that we would visit these discussion once we had the opportunity to do and deal with the wastewater and water in Adirondack. And that has never come to fruition. So to go forward and say, we're willing to do this just does not give us any leg to stand on. Considering we've been trying to actively do the water that we have not done in many, many moons. So for that being said, I agree with you wholeheartedly that the Gallipoe Center is something we need to all work on as a group. And the wastewater is also something we need to work on as a group. And one came well before the other. And I think we need to resolve one as a group before we move on to this one as a group. That would be my feelings on that.
Sure. I agree with both. I think being involved with the, obviously being involved in the process, I think is very important. And I think, but exactly what Councillor Crabtree said is that there's something that, you know, obviously that's been very important to us that we've been talking about for many, many years. And even in connection with this too as well. I'm more in favor of saying, yeah, we're interested in going forward with this because we also want to see that community growth and we want to see that happen. We recognize that it's important for the build to happen there. We recognize all of that. And I think we're also I think we also recognize that we are, I don't want to be in the way of anything. I mean, we want to make sure that we're helping in that process. But I think also we have to make sure that we get the water and wastewater situation dealt with. And I think we could come back to the town and say, like always, Montague is always wanting to work with our partners. We always want to work with the Tenesmus Falls to do what's best for the community. So we're game for starting this process. But before this process is over and is presented and we pay for our share, the water and wastewater agreement is open and completed. To me, it's a sit down of a few meetings in a few months. There's a good understanding of sort of like how we can make sure that it's a little bit better. And I'm not gonna get into discussions of what we could do to make that better, but as far as sitting that down and doing that, and actually have one that's fair, and then we dive into this one to make sure that this one is fair, and we and being involved in it and paying our share. I mean, I wholeheartedly, for sure, but we can be a part of that process. And before this will take months to do, and we open up that water one. And as soon as we get that one completed, we happily pay for this one, and then we can roll into that discussion of what that looks like as far as the development plan and everything else too as well. So I would respectfully like to send back the Tenesmus Falls a letter saying, we are very open. We are always willing to work with our partners. We would like to be involved and start this process. But in that time frame, because this will be consultants doing the work. This is not the town. This is not taking away from staff from the town to doing that. Let's engage into that conversation to make sure that is completed and done with. And then that is done with. This is done. we pay that portion, and then we go into the discussion of what that looks like. So I think that's, if we, that's what I think we should sort of follow that sort of, that's a chain of events, I guess.
So with reference to the timeline, I mean, for this review from the town of Smith Falls, the consultant is proposing that they have a kickoff meeting in March, and then they have steering committee meetings, all virtual, which consist of the various departments of the town of Smith Falls with the consultant. And they're looking to have a final report to the Council of Smith Falls in person in November of 2025. So that's when they're looking to have that done. So I'm not sure if that timeline and our timeline of meetings and getting the water and wastewater agreement resolved would meet in that time. But I do agree that that is the first focus, and then we can address the findings. So that's what you're saying, is we have our water and wastewater rolled up prior to this finalizing?
Yeah, because I mean,
what you thought.
so because this is 8 months is basically what that sort of, that proposal side of it too as well.
Right.
To me, this is not a big agreement, like overall, there's minimum amount of houses there, it's a minimum, and I think we have tons of other agreements that we can reference to that are in our area that make sense to what works. So I think once they're pulled in, I think it's not really a hard one. We just have to make sure that we actually have the meetings and we sit down and do it. I think that gives lots of time in the meantime to get that done. And then when this is presented, I mean, yeah, that's what I think. I think there's a great opportunity for that. So sorry.
Yeah, no, not at all. So with that then, if really we're just paying an invoice at a later date, we look at it that way. If certain conditions are met. So if we're not gonna be part of the steering committees and things like that anyway, then we can run meetings in parallel and not stop their timelines in any way. So we could then write a letter back to them, exactly what Jeff and Gerald are saying, is that, yes, we're very interested in this. This is the wastewater thing that we would like to finalize. And then we just go from there and see what their response is. I'm fine with something like that.
Yeah.
Being a newcomer to all this, I don't understand some of the history that is there. The only thing is that I would like a process to get up and running so that we can move forward on all of this to get to a bigger game. What I mean, but I do and I'm cognizant of what you're saying, Gerald, that this is something that's been around for a long time and it seems very simple, like you said, Jeff. So if we can go back and do that, and if we're not part of the steering committee, which I sort of get from the way you said that, then because the reason that because I thought, well, we'd be part of that, but if we're not, then.
Yeah. No, the plan that is in the document is that it's the town of Smith Falls.
I just thought
Because the
that-
property is in the town and it's discussing the impacts of their infrastructure, et cetera, and moving forward if development occurs and how do you finance that and all that.
And I was
So-
just hopeful that they wanted us in at the bottom level to be part of it, even if we were on the steering committee, but as a observer or something. But if they're making no attempt to do that, then I understand.
Not according to the information we've been
Okay.
provided.
I just read that.
But again, talking about the steering committee, it's right now. From the documents I've read and I understand, the way that they're implementing it, they're without having someone who's already interested on the property. They are trying to steer the property in a specific direction. By the way that they're wording the documents and by what they're doing, they're saying, okay, this is the type of development we want. And can we find a partner based on what we want? As opposed to finding a partner that's interested in the land and they're gonna bring it the opposite way. So the only thing I see with this is they're controlling the narrative, which might scare away other potential people by doing it this way. Sometimes it's better to wait to see what somebody's interested in doing. And I'm talking about from a construction
Yeah.
aspect.
No.
With having people come in and say, hey, this is what we'd like to do, this is what we see. As opposed to when you bring the control the narrative and you say, okay, this is what we want you to do. So it could be lost money. Because if somebody comes back and says, well, that's not what we want to do. this money is, and Smith Falls says, hey, we're gonna go with it anyways, this is lost money. So it's just, could be a complete waste, all depending on who that potential client, that potential sale is. And I think that maybe this is something that could be discussed about and talked about as well, because nobody wants to spend any sort of money and just have it go nowhere. As opposed to having, you know, here's who's interested, here's what they'd like to do, how do we make that happen? And then that's usually what in what I do for a living, that's how it works. It's we work with that person and we try to facilitate what's gonna work for them and work for us, because it goes both ways. So it's just, I think the way it's worded, the document, where Smith Falls is trying to steer the narrative, and sometimes we have to wait for that client to help us. Where do you want that narrative, and how can we work together collaboratively and get a great idea?
I think they're working on this from a previous intent. They had a potential client originally, like,
But they're no longer
I
interested?
think that's what I understood at the meeting that you and I attended
Okay.
from Malcolm's report. And so I think they're just following through so that they are prepared. But it's, I mean, their development with reference to water and wastewater and everything else that has to happen there. They're not like us with well and septic. And so that we're just addressing whether or not we want to share on the cost. Whether we say right now we're not, because we want to move forward with our water and wastewater agreement being resolved first, and then addressing.
I think if, in my opinion, is we say that we'd like to have one done before the other. And then if we want to, as a council, say that once ours is done, we can review or pay where our portion is based on reviewing of the documents and what's going on. We can pay that, so they would pay it now, and then we can look at paying it in the future,
I think that's.
which is similar with Jeff.
Yeah,
I think that's what Jeff had said.
And that's one of
yeah.
the things with like, they're gonna go ahead with this regardless.
Okay.
So I think that's one of the biggest things
Yeah.
without sort of our financial commitment or not. You know, and I think exactly what Trevor says, we want to be part of it.
Yeah.
I mean, and we want to be involved, and as much as like, there's a steering committee and everything else. If we're putting dollars into it, then we do have our hands in there, right? So if we're not, then we're just kind of screaming from the sidelines. So like, we want to have our hands in there. But I think so let us put our hands in there, but we have ample time to make sure that we deal with the thing that we've been wanting to get done too as well, because we want this to work. Like, I think that's the one thing we really want to strive is that we want this to go forward. We want this to work. We want to see development at the Galsbo Center. We want to see that change. We are not in any interest whatsoever of standing in the way. We want this to work. We are just requesting in that same time, the thing that we've been wanting to have done for a long time, that, hey, let's just make sure we're getting it done, and we're getting it done together. And then when that's done and everything is, and this is being presented, then we can pay the bill. We have 8 months to do it. We have a lot of time to do this. There's no reason why, and we are open and ready to work. I think that's really the message. We are not stopping or slowing down anything.
Right.
And I think that's really the narrative that we want, and we want to put that back and say, like, we're your neighbors, we're ready to work with you, and this is what we're ready to do. So like, let's go play in the sandbox.
Yeah. So staff direction is that the letter is sent to the town of Smith Falls with reference to
What are we for?
yeah, and that.
That and how we're
Our
looking
involvement.
for
Yeah,
that, and we
yeah,
want to
exactly.
work.
We want to be part of it.
We want to be part of it, and we want to work
Exactly.
together, and say,
And like you said, you know, being part of it, as opposed to being in the back, just being told, hey, this is what we've done. Would be like, that's actually a collaborative, plan, and I like that.
That's the exact word that I want we want to be collaborative. You know, and that's what we're trying to do. Anyway, yeah, no, I agree totally with the wastewater part of it, Matt. I think it's great.
So then staff will draft a letter, stating that we are interested in partnering with the town of Smith Falls, but that we do, require that the water and wastewater agreement be resolved. And then we would be willing to pay our proportionate share thereafter.
I think you say you reflected that the wastewater
Right.
required, because that's a
Correct.
term that is sometimes
Yep.
impossible.
Yes,
Positive, I like it.
Yes,
Awesome. Thank you.
like friendly neighbors.
Yeah, friendly. Good bug.
I don't think we've ever said group hug in a meeting before, so that's.
there's never any touching.
And so we have none of our information items brought forward. Unfinished business or other business? Questions online? Questions of our audience?
Where's Tom when you need?
Yeah, exactly. All right. So,
My poor friend.
vote of friends. Moved by Councillor Johnson and seconded by Deputy Reeve Carroll that bylaw 4127-2025 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at its regular meeting held on February 18th, 2025. We read a first, second, and third time and passed, signed, and sealed this 18th day of February 2025. All in favor? It's carried. So Tom, we missed you. Moved by
We
Deputy.
know what you're watching.
Yes. Moved by Deputy Reeve Carroll and seconded by Councillor Crabtree that council adjourn the regular meeting of council of February 18th, 2025 at 7:19 PM until March 4th, 2025 at 6 PM or at the call of the chair. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much.